Hello everyone and welcome to Hospitality Huddles. Today I'm really excited because I'm joined by someone who probably loves hotels as much as I do. It's Steve Turk all the way from Miami, and today we had a great conversation back and forth about everything that's great in hotels, our journey from hoteliers to what we're doing now with Auden Hospitality and Turk Hospitality Ventures, and what to do with those underutilized spaces that you just need to unlock. It's a great conversation. Listen all the way till the end because there's so much value all the way through. And without further ado, why don't we just get into the show? So here we go. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you enjoy the show. Steve, how are you? We've been trying to get on to do this recording for weeks now, and I'm so pleased that we finally managed to get a chance in. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat.
No, absolutely, Scott. I'm excited to be here with you. It has been several weeks of us planning, maybe even months. And for whatever reason, we keep getting things that block us. But I love our flexibility that we are able to make this happen today.
For sure. And I just said offline that my wife sat there when I was we couldn't connect, and she said, well, it must be in a good place if you two guys are too busy to connect. So let's take the positives out of that situation. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this and chatting about a subject that we really love together, which is hotels and what great hotels look like.
No, and I love following along on you. And so if you're listening to this and you're not following Scott, make sure you're doing it because he posts every single day on LinkedIn some great information. I love seeing it. And it shows that you really care and you know what you're talking about, because there's a lot of people out there who act like they do, but they don't know what they're talking about. And you can see very clearly the people that do. So good job, man.
For sure. And do you know what? That's probably a really good place to start on the chat. And we spoke off air and said, let's kind of make this really conversational. One of the things that I find when I moved out of day-to-day operations and set up my own business and started doing the consulting advisory piece was that bit in the industry where there is a lot of those consultants that, sometimes don't want to get their hands dirty, maybe don't have the experience they think they do, or can make an impact on a business. Is it something that you found as well doing your thing over there in Miami, or is there a different relationship with consultants, hotels over there?
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of people who just were not good at what they did and maybe got laid off or fired, or who knows what the situation might be, that became consultants and they want to help, but they don't really know what to start with or how to help. And they're more want to be on the floor and be more task force. Right. And so I think it's very hard for someone like that doesn't have a clear goal on what they want to help hotels with or restaurants with. It's going to be a struggle for them. I think there's also a lot of people who worked maybe 1 or 2 years that want to become that consultant to people, but you have to have a base of knowledge that you're able to solve multiple things. And that only comes through a lot of reps, like, right? It's like going through those situations and having deal with them and done it within top organizations. So I see it a lot. I see more and more people trying to do it because they think it's just a 9 to 5 and it's more flexible, which is not. Like, once you're an entrepreneur, it's all day, every day kind of thing that you just happen to be able to do from different places. So I don't think a lot of people understand that when they jump in. I think they see you and I like, oh, they get to do whatever they want and whatever, and they're on a podcast and having fun. When it's really, you're out there all the time working and grinding and helping as many people as possible.
Yeah, 100% for sure. And it's I always think about like the bit about why we're on social media and doing what we're doing is, for me, it's a business development tool. I use it to show people my expertise. I think it's the modern day pitch deck. It's the modern day PDF where you add value, you show experience, you show expertise. And then what I've found from doing that is almost that conversion piece once someone gets in touch is much quicker because you've already built the trust and the knowledge base that goes with it as well, isn't it? So it's, people look and think, oh, he's always on social media, he's always doing this. But actually, it's very strategic in terms of why that's happening. And it's,
I got to ask that question the other day, and I said, look, if you're not top of mind, you're out of mind. And so there's a lot of people like if you're going to come into the Miami market or South Florida or even like the Southeast of the United States, you're competing with me. Right. And so I'm going to do everything I can do to make sure I have some kind of edge, like, not in a negative way. 100%. It's more of we're all competing for similar kind of businesses.
Mm,
And so if I can already break down the door where people feel like they know me already, whether it's doing one of the 3 podcasts that I'm doing, talking to
yeah,
you, putting out different content that's just fun to watch, a lot of people feel like they know me already. And so it's
yeah,
funny. I'm sure you start to see that now, like where you're putting out a lot of stuff and like, oh, I follow you on whatever
yeah,
LinkedIn or on YouTube or whatever it might be. It's kind of funny to
yeah,
meet those people and be like, oh, like, you don't know them, but I want to be a genuine, authentic, nice guy as I'm meeting him. But it helps tremendously because you're already through that door if they're reaching out to you. Most times they've seen it.
yeah,
So it helps. I mean, I'm sure you
100%.
see that too, right? Is that helping you where you are?
Yeah, definitely. Do you know the amount of people who, and it's back to that piece about, you know, what does it take to be successful is, you know, you don't start posting on LinkedIn and suddenly the flood doors start opening. You don't suddenly do a podcast and, you know, the floodgates start opening. What I found from doing it is, it's a slow burner. What it really helped me do was get my pitch and my elevator pitch down to a T. It keeps me on track about what I talk about. And because I'm writing content every day, when I then speak to hoteliers or new potential clients, I have it top of mind because I'm writing about it all the time. So I've got examples, I've got use cases, I've got test cases there. And the amount of times people contact me through LinkedIn and said, you know what, we've been watching your stuff for a while. We've never had the reason to get in touch, but today that post just sat right with me, and now's the time to speak. I reckon it's probably every single person that's reached out. So that whole thing about turning up, being consistent every single day, or however that your consistency works, doing the different formats, I think really does sit with people, and it's just about the right time that those people need to buy. And I studied a lot people outside of our industry, some of the solopreneurs, some of these content creators, and that's what all of them say is
Mhm.
keep posting, because when that person that you're speaking to has the right pain point, you're going to be the first person that comes up on the feed that they contact. And I've seen that in real life.
Yeah, who were some people that you were watching? I'm curious because like I watched a ton of them too. Who was like people that you're like, oh wow, this got me to go on do a podcast or get me to start posting? Who was it?
Oh, that's a really good question. Do you know, the reason I first went onto LinkedIn was I was talking with Jim Taylor, because we're both ambassadors in the Burnt Chef project. And when I first set up my business, and I'll always remember him saying, you know, what are you going to do to market the business? And I came out with all the standard, you know, maybe I'll get a PR company, maybe I'll try and get press. And he just said, I tried that and I wasted a lot of cash. And this is now what I do every day. And this is my primary source of revenue. And we went through a process. He was incredibly helpful. He helped me how to structure posts. He helped me how to analyze posts. And that was really how I started doing it. And he challenged me to post every single day for 90 days. And I'm not one to
Wow.
take on a challenge and not deliver. So I went and did it. And then it just, I got into a rhythm of how to create content and how to keep it flowing. And from that day on, I don't think I've missed a day. Sometimes posting twice, just depending on kind of what's there and what's not there, and testing and things like that. But outside of the industry, do you know, I Justin Welsh is a big one. Really strong on LinkedIn and content creation, solopreneur. I think,
Yeah,
you know,
I bought his
a lot.
course. So I actually went and bought
Yeah,
his course, Justin Welsh. It was one of the guys like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I was like, let me see if I can get some value out of this one too.
yeah, yeah. And
So big
I
shout
did
out
the
for
same.
Justin. We're not affiliates, you see?
No, 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 we're not affiliates. We should be. But no, I got the course as well. Really helped, again, that whole tagline and pitch and how to create content. So that's a good one. There's another guy who I think is from the Netherlands called Richard van der Blom. And he releases like a LinkedIn algorithm report every year. But just how he talks about B2B marketing through LinkedIn is just really intelligent, and it's very broad. There's no real kind of specific in terms of industry, but that whole bit about how you can hit emotions and optimize profiles and things like that, I think is, you know, fundamentally LinkedIn is my primary revenue tool. It's the one place where I go and I get business. So I'm all in on LinkedIn. I study algorithms. I study how to optimize profiles and all of that type of thing. And I just, yeah, I find it really really interesting. But then I have to give a big shout out to Sean Walchef, because the reason I get on and do videos, the reason I'm doing the podcast, is because I once sat on a call with Sean, and I was sitting there going, you know what, I've done a lot of written content, but I don't want people to get bored with what I'm doing. What would your advice be? And he said, you know what the advice is? And I said, you're going to say video, aren't you? And he said, yes. I said, but I'm really uncomfortable with video. And he said, but you're the only person stopping stopping it is you. And he said,
Yep.
go on today and post a video and tell me what happens. And I went on, posted a video. It was terrible. And since then, me and Sean have always laughed about creating cringeworthy moments and cringeworthy
Yep.
videos that you can look back on in time and go, actually, look how bad I was then, but look how different it is. And, you know, then the podcast and things like that is pretty cool. So how about you? Who are the people that you keep an eye on?
Well, the first one I think that really got me thinking about things like this was back in like 2018 was Gary Vaynerchuk. I mean, you see
Yeah.
him everywhere. I don't know if you know him,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I got to meet him in person. And so it was funny because again, I felt like I knew him. And so I was
Mm.
working at the Lowe's Miami Beach Hotel. He was a guest and I saw him as labeled as a VIP coming. And I was, executive at the hotel. And I said, oh, I know everything he likes. We're going to put all these amenities in his room. We're going to blow it out. He's going to
Yeah.
love this stuff. He's coming for the holidays, and did just that. And it wowed him so much that, I get to end up talking to him. And turns out, his daughter got a little bit sick during the trip and we got her taken care of. And I made that connection, but it was cool that I
Yeah.
listened to him for so many years, got to meet him and then get his phone number and be able to talk to him. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start really going all in on this because I felt like I
Yeah.
know this guy. And so I started doing it while I was in the hotel, like just posting what's going on in the hotel with pictures and like really motivating myself. And during
Mm.
the pandemic, that's where it all started was if you go back to anyone that has free time, you can go back to my post in 2020. And I was just writing to myself. It was me just motivating myself because I was like,
Mm.
man, it's really hard to run a hotel during this time. And so that's
Yeah.
what it was. And it led me to my first client while I was working in the hotel. Like someone wrote to me, like, hey, this struck a chord. Can you help me with my restaurant in a state that was far away at a tiny little place? And I gave him some advice. And he's like, man, you saved my restaurant. And it took me an hour of just giving some free time to somebody.
Yeah.
And that's when
Yeah.
I realized like I could do this. And that's how it changed. But
Mm.
shout out to Gary Vaynerchuk, Justin Welsh. I like a lot. I've been watching a lot of YouTubers lately because I've been going in on video. So there's
Yeah.
a bunch of YouTubers that I'm just trying to take things from. There's this guy, Ryan Trahan, younger guy, like in his 20s, but he does like cool like videos, which kind of struck
Okay.
me into doing what I'm doing now, like this 50 hotels and 50-day challenge I gave myself just
Yeah.
to see if I could do something for 50 days. So there's a bunch of fun guys out there that are doing unique things.
Yeah, for sure. I've got I listen to Gary Vaynerchuk every day, and there's a piece of advice that's going through my mind at the minute, not just literally today, but that's been constantly going. And he was talking about how most people, when they have their own business, they make the first 100,000 and they go out and they buy glitzy stuff and all the named stuff and all the rest of it. And he said, actually, the best way to get 300 grand is to invest the 100 grand. And the first thing you should do is take 30 or 40 of it and find someone to do the jobs you hate, because that's going to give you more time to build the business again. And I've just got to that point in my business, thankfully, where we've got to the bit now where we've kind of gone through the first 2 years. We've established ourselves. We've got a good reputation. I've just brought the first couple of people on. And it was really that bit where it's like, okay, I'm going to have to take a bit of a hit now and stop a little bit to get people in to go to next stage growth. And it's been, it was sitting with me. And then I heard that from Gary Vaynerchuk, and I was like, yeah, this is the time to do it. He's bang right. So there's a lot to be said, isn't there, about just consuming content, consuming data, and listening. And when it's the right time, it's all you
Doing
need
it.
is that one thing, and it pops in, doesn't it? So yeah, for
There's
sure,
also
for
listening to the
sure.
people that are actually doing it, right? So that's why I think guys like Gary, or there's a bunch of people out there like that. But especially him, you're listening to him, I listen to him. This office that I have, this little studio and the room I have next door is based off of that, right? I hired a PR person, I hired someone to do content marketing, I hired a copywriter right off the bat. As soon as I started getting checks in, I knew it was like the only way I can really juice this up is if I get those people. Now AI has helped a lot of those things, right? And so we've been able to fast forward and be more efficient using AI tools. but I invested a lot of money, especially the first year and a half, 2 years, where I could have been making way more. That was my mindset right away. I was like, I'll make a lot less. Let's just get this engine really running. 'Cause I knew that was the only way to
Yeah,
get
that's great advice.
leads in, was I needed to be top of mind all the time.
Yeah.
Video, newsletter, posts, being in events, going to these things, like, as much as I could.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, that's how we first met as well, and
Yeah, online, LinkedIn. You and I
I
are
think
LinkedIn
on
connected.
LinkedIn, yeah, exactly, and we met online, and it was one of those where I set myself a challenge in the early days where we were actually quite as busy as we might do to use that time to connect with as many people as possible and to understand how to get ahead or understand where people were seeing success. And it's funny, isn't it? The world's a massive place, but actually it's relatively small, isn't it? In terms of, I talk to people a lot, and the problems hoteliers face here is the same problems hoteliers are facing in the US. I spoke to
Yep.
someone in Asia the other day for a large hotel group, and everything he was saying was exactly what we're experiencing in London. So the themes are common across the globe, aren't they, at the minute, for sure?
Yeah, and look, the hospitality world is small, especially as you move up that pyramid in these hotels. A lot of people
Mm.
move every 2 years to different companies, and it's just amazing to see, like, the same people that we know together and what they're doing. It's all very similar. But the world is small,
Yeah.
especially the people that are voicing these things out there. Like, we saw that list from the International Hospitality Institute, right? Like, we're on there,
Mm.
both of us, right? Like, we're
Mm.
sharing things, and there's not many people doing it. So if you can be out there, if you're listening and you want to start something, just be out there. You never know where you're going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. You said a really interesting point as you were talking about your story there, which anyone who's listening to this, I really want them to take from, because it's probably the thing that I didn't do when I was working in full time employment for people, and that was start creating content um, that had a purpose in mind of what maybe the next step might be, or just creating content for where they were, because I probably didn't do that enough. I was in the role, didn't I was quite happy, didn't see why I needed to do content necessarily. The marketing team did that for the restaurants. And when I came out of that environment and had my own thing, or even now fast tracking through the pandemic, where I think CVs and things have kind of diminished slightly, and people are looking towards what's going on social media. That whole piece around personal brand is now the new way to really establish yourself at the front of the queue. So, for example, if there was two of us applying for a job as a hotel GM right now, or an F&B director, and I didn't produce content and I just had my CV. But you were going online every day, showing the great stuff you were doing in your hotel, showing the great stuff that you think about and your expertise. You're already ahead of the game, aren't you? And it's a really interesting point that you said that, because that's probably the bit in COVID that I had a lot of opportunity to do, but I didn't do. That when I look at people like yourself now, who may be ahead of the game, they were hot onto that early, and it's a really valuable point to share with people.
Yeah, I would be doing it now. Like, if you're not sharing something,
Yeah,
it's starting now. Because if you're in the hotel, like, I'm getting calls from people. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of people looking for work right now. They just can't seem to lock
yeah,
down a job, which is the weirdest thing, because
yeah,
hotels are hiring. They just maybe can't find it. It seems like it's like
yeah.
something going on. But you're right. The first client I ever got, and here's how I got him, was I was posting on LinkedIn all the cool stuff I was doing at my previous hotel, right? All the big events I was doing, all the activations, all the brand partnerships. And they called me and said, "Hey, we see everything you're doing. We want you to be our hotel manager. Bring this energy to this property. We see what you're doing." I said, "That's a hard thing to turn down, but I've already decided I was starting my company." I said, "I could fix all these things for you if you hire me through my consulting company." And they said yes, which was a hard decision at that time, because you could think
Yeah.
it was a lot of money that they were throwing as a hotel manager,
Yeah.
to say no and say, "Hey, just pay me less and I'll do it this way." But they're still with me. They've been a client since day one. So that only came from posting things that added value
Mm.
to others. And so if you're wondering, like, where to start, if you're working on a new menu, you don't have to give your pricing and all this stuff, but how did you decide to make that menu? Or, hey, we
Yeah.
did a tasting today and now we're going to launch it. Some how-to stuff is what people really want to see. That's what they're looking for. Versus, which is nice, like, where everyone's like celebrating with a trophy, or hey, we did a training today, or hey, we did this. It's more of,
Mm.
think of how you can teach one person something. Imagine that person. So
Yeah.
I always have one person in my head. I still think about these one or two people that when I'm posting this, is that helping them somehow? And so I
Yeah.
hope that helps somebody out there today.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely. I think it's the one thing that when I'm working with clients now, I always have those conversations as well, is who's the guy who's going to be posting what we're doing on the journey and working with us to get the content. And we did a launch of a restaurant probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. And one of the conversations we had was who's going to capture everything that happens this week, because not only is that going to be a great training video, it's going to be a great video to show at your staff awards at the end of the year, and it's going to be let's get that on social and start getting guests engaged in what's going to come as well. And I think, sometimes in hotels, I think we want everything to be too polished. We want
Yep.
everything to look really pretty. And I think sometimes we know that authenticity rules. We know that people being genuine rules the roost. And I think sometimes if people just use the right format, Insta stories, TikTok, YouTube shorts, to really show authenticity and be quite raw, it can really have a profound effect on the guests, on future people who might want to come and work from you. And all of a sudden, you, like you were saying earlier, you're standing out from the crowd, aren't you? And I think if we look at your 50-day challenge, that's one of the great examples, isn't it, of how you can go into hotels and you can find the simplest thing and really shout it out as a USP, and it can really shine people in a different light.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And I would say for hotels listening, give some rules for your team to be able to post something, because I had the corporate PR director of that hotel group call me, I don't know, a handful of times, take down that post. Right? And I was like, why? It's because this is out of place. This doesn't look right. I was like, this is what you're spending your time watching me. But I felt good. And the part I was like, all right,
Yeah,
they're watching me. People see me at this level,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
funny. But I think that's what you need, is like, get that user generated content from your team, give them these rules. But if you're just squashing because everything has to look perfect, I think you miss out on a lot of things, especially for whether it's recruiting, getting people to want to be at your hotel. And then
yeah,
it doesn't have to be perfect. Like this 50 days, 50 hotels in 50 days. 2 years ago, I would have wanted like a professional photographer and cameraman coming with me. I'm just going out with my iPhone right now.
yeah,
And the iPhone can do a decent enough job if you just watch a couple of videos of like how to angle things.
yeah.
So you don't need everything don't let not having gear stop you. You go use your phone and start something today.
Yeah, it's true. I have a guy, my ops director, and I think he still uses the iPhone 8 or something like that. It's terrible. I need to buy him a new phone. But he's really bad at photography. And we found this course online. It was $99. Teaches you how to do everything on an iPhone.
Mhm.
And it's an online course like the one we did with Justin Welsh. And yeah, the resources out there, but you can go on YouTube, you can go on TikTok, and all this stuff's sitting there, isn't it? It's so useful. I had a situation with a client where we had a bartender. We found out these TikTok videos were averaging about 1 million views, and we were like, all he'd done is in his previous job, he went live and he was just showing himself live on the bar in a night, busy night. He was getting all these views, and we were like, listen, this is just that's marketing genius. It's waiting to happen. Let's just do the same thing with us. And the marketing girl said to me, okay, but before he does, can you give me a shout so I can come up and make sure nothing's out of place? And exactly the same story as you just had. Nothing's out of place. The bar's nice and clean. There's nothing you can see behind. It was like, well, the guy's got 1 million views. I'm not sure we're in a position to be telling him how we should be
What to do.
staging his videos. Let's
Mhm.
use the asset. And I think that's, back to your point, I think sometimes that's where, if we look at independent restaurants to hotels, I think that's sometimes where hotels take themselves too seriously, and it impacts potential success after, doesn't it?
Yeah, just on a lot of things too. Like I'm working with clients that are trying to get into hotels, and some hotels they're like safety and contracts and legal and insurance. It's just like, this is why your hotel's boring, because
Yeah.
you're trying to stop everything from happening when it's right here ready to
Yeah.
go for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
It's
know,
true.
so I think that we just got to embrace it a little bit more. But I'm trying to use live more often. I'm trying to figure out how to do it. Like I know I just hit the live and go, but like, what am I going to be sharing live? That's the thing I got to
Mm.
figure out a little bit more. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've
Yeah.
dived into it at all or anyone's doing, but that's like the big thing right now that everyone's talking about pushing.
Yeah. Yeah, I exactly right. I heard the same thing, and I've been thinking about it with our clients. When we did the restaurant launch the other week, I didn't do it, but I wondered whether it was, when you're doing the staff tasting, of whether you could do that on a live, so you're literally seeing like the reactions of the staff. And
Yep.
when they're sitting there, like we had a thing, and it's funny, we did a recording straight after the day with my ops director who was running the training that day, and he said this amazing line about the food tasting, which was, without prompt, they all got the phones out and all went to take a picture. And I looked at them and thought, we've cracked it. Because if you want to take pictures of it, the guests will want to take pictures of it. And it was an amazing quote. And I thought to myself, how powerful could that be if that was live and literally guests watching saw the natural reaction of the team? So I was thinking that could have been a good one. I think, sticking it on the top of the pass, just watching chefs plating the food, I think could be a really cool one as well, for restaurants. And I guess if you're working on projects, it could be quite cool with that. But yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? The live thing. I've been trying to work out the right formula for it as well, to be honest. So if anyone's listening to this and can
Let us
help
know
us,
what you're
then
doing.
definitely let us know on that. Yeah, it'd be really cool. There was Sean Walchef here now, like typing like
Uh,
this. Just go live, just go live. But yeah, for
no,
sure,
it's
for
like
sure.
I put it on in my office. Like, this feels weird. I don't like this being stared at in an
Yeah.
office, because some people talked about that. But if I was in a hotel, I think that would be cool. Like the tastings, and I have people be able to vote. Like, do you like this dish or this plate or this
Mm.
fork? Like when you're getting things, I think that would get people excited. I'd like to watch that. It would be fun to see.
Yeah,
So there you go. So kind of
definitely.
scratching your own itch, like what we want to see as we're going there.
Yeah, that's the one, isn't it? There's a restaurant you should check out here in the UK who they're called Fallow, and they have got, I can't remember the crazy amount of followers they have on TikTok and Instagram, but essentially their team go on and they'll do like recipes every day, and it'll just be very natural. They'll go on, and the social media is amazing. They've just got an investment of £3 million, and a big chunk of that they're going to grow the content creation team, because it's such a powerful engine. So check out what those guys are doing, because they're doing a really good job. And I think, I can't remember the total amount, but between YouTube and I think it's Instagram, they've got a crazy amount of followers. So it's a good example of a restaurant that's doing it well.
That's amazing. I got to check that out. What was the name? Let me write it down here. I'm sorry,
It's called
listeners. I'm writing this
no
down.
no no that's all right. It's Fallow, so FALLOW. I hope I
Got
haven't
it.
got that wrong live on recording. But yeah, FALLOW. But yeah, cool. It's really cool. Now, one of the things that I thought was really cool when you shared it was talking about underutilized spaces in hotels, and it's something that I hadn't shared before, actually. But when you did share it, we were probably working on a similar project at the same time. So I thought it'd be really cool to just brainstorm some ideas, so that if there's some hoteliers out there listening and they've got some storerooms or some spaces, we might be able to add some value to them. So do you want to fire off some of those underutilized spaces that you've worked on with some of your clients to kick it
Yeah,
off?
absolutely. So look, when you're in a hotel, and for listeners that don't know this, you have that budget that comes out every year, and every year just seems to get higher and higher magically, and you have to figure out how to make more money, and you just can't just raise prices. So you got to figure out some unique things to do. And so that's
Yeah,
always stuck with me when I started creating these budgets, especially for food and beverage. It's the hardest executive job out there for
yeah,
hotels, right? So
100%.
you always have to be an entrepreneur mindset creating things
Yeah,
for your hotel. But I like seeing empty storerooms can be easily turned into game rooms and arcade rooms for these
yeah,
family friendly hotels. That was like low hanging fruit. And I've done that now at like 5 hotels that don't have like
yeah,
a kids area. That's one of my favorite things to do. And you can do it in a small space. You can do it in a really big space. Love
yeah,
doing that. I love working with beverage and liquor vendors. I don't know the rules in other countries, but in Florida, you're able to team up with them, and they spend money and bring clients and do fun activations that turn
yeah,
a dead space of your hotel into something that, like, my best one got me the most coverage was I did a Veuve Clicquot beach pop up. It was like basically a beach house with Veuve Clicquot, and we were the
mm,
first to get them with their like fast food cartons that everyone copied after we
okay,
did it.
yeah, yeah,
So it was very cool to see that go out there. Um, And so it was just funny to see how many people started doing it after we did it, but it got into like the New York Times and Rolling Stone magazine and all these cool
Mhm.
things. But also working with local vendors. So I have a client now that does gelato, and they have
Okay.
like a classic Fiat car. And so we worked out a model where a hotel can say, "Hey, I want to work with you." They don't need to buy anything. They don't need to buy the cart. They don't need to buy the cones. They don't need to buy the supplies. The cart shows up and they do a revenue share. Very easy. And they label the cart with your logo. It's in a lobby. It can be at your pool deck. It can be anywhere. And so all of a sudden, you don't need staff. You don't need supplies. You don't need anything. You just have these pop ups. So I'm really focused on
Yeah.
stuff like that now. Whether it's like I saw a barber shop that now just pops up in the lobby that has Macallan,
Yeah.
that goes with it. It's like unique things
Yeah.
like this that I love seeing. So I threw out a lot, but what about you?
Yeah, that was some good ones. Yeah, I think, do you know what? The revenue share thing is a really interesting model, isn't it? Because it's one of those that there's just no risk to the hotelier. It adds
Yep.
total value to the guests that are there as well, and it serves a need and it serves a purpose, and it does what it needs to say on the tin. So I think that's brilliant. You know, it's funny. We're having a conversation with a company called Wondermart at the minute, which is almost like the Amazon Fresh for hotels. And the guy was telling me that they're starting to do bespoke modeling with some of the big brands, so the Hiltons, the Marriotts. I think there was a cause in there in terms of some of their hotels and some of their hotel brands, which don't necessarily need full service outlets or maybe the guests are on the go and stuff like that. They're developing a bespoke model of this Amazon Fresh type concept that can serve the needs. So it's freshly baked pastries and etc. etc. So I think that's really interesting. We're working with a hotel right now. It's in the countryside and they sit on a high street. They have a real hard time in the restaurant because there's just no real niche. All the guests are kind of wanting to go to the high street. And we're kind of doing a process with them now of what's your USP? Like what can you offer the guests that they can't get anywhere else? And one of them is convenience before they go out hiking in the daytime. So we're looking
All
at
right.
doing one of these Wondermart style concepts, which offers them basically food that they can do as a picnic to take out on the hike with them. So instead
That's
of having
great.
a restaurant that's going to suffer with payroll and it's always going to be challenging the high street, let's kind of look at that space and go, how can we activate it into a revenue center? Again, their model there, you pay for the capex, but they take care of supply chain and everything else. And some of the profit numbers were great from it. So that was one that we were there now. We put a podcast studio into a conference room.
Yep.
So it was a conference center that was in a basement. They were really struggling with people buying the conference rooms because they had no natural light. It was in the basement. So we looked at that. I was like, okay, how do we create a USP? They were in a basement. They had no noise. Anyone who has ever done a Zoom call with people in London will know about sirens and things like that. So there was none of that going on. And we put it in there. I think it cost about $1,500, something like that. It wasn't that expensive to get it
Not
up
bad.
and going. And it was already soundproofed. It was we had to do a little bit on acoustics. We had to put the couple of mics in there, and we trialed it as a concept, and it did incredibly well, and to the point where now they've put more mics in there. They've invested more in kind of video equipment as well, so that they can really start offering more and more value. So that was a great one. And then
So who's
the
using
most
it? Was it hotel
interesting.
guests? Was it hotel guests using it, or was it outside people using it?
Yeah, so this hotel was near a university, ironically. So there was a lot of uni students going in there and using it. But hotel guests, and then they had a co-working space as well. So the co-working guys would just go down there and do a recording and
Cool.
come
Love
out
it.
as well. So yeah, that was really cool. And then the best one we did was we were working with same hotel group, different hotel that was near a university. It was near a music university. And we looked at that, and there was people coming and going all the time that was going to the university. So we took a space and made it into a music room, and we put equipment in there, musical instruments in there, so they could go in there, they could do jams, they could record it and upload it to the laptops and stuff like that. It was all soundproof, so it didn't affect anyone. And that again wasn't as good as the podcast studio, but did really well in terms of just being a point of difference that they could sell. It was an empty storeroom, so it wasn't doing anything. So yeah, that was a really cool one to do. That was just completely different, gave it a bit of a point of difference, and people loved it. And sometimes when it wasn't booked, they just left it open to guests, so guests could just go in there and play and stuff like that. And it was really cool because you just go down there and listen to some like a guest who was away from home just playing the most amazing tunes on the piano or something, and he was just going down there and chilling out and relaxing and stuff. So yeah, it was a really cool one, that one.
I like that one. See, that's very cool. So I don't have that here in Miami. I feel like how would people treat it here? Maybe they're partying too hard. They go down and start smashing some guitars. I don't know, but I feel like if you did it the right way, it would be a
Yeah.
fun thing. But I love the podcast one. I think I had talked about that. You would talk about that. They don't really have it here. I've tried to convince a couple people. I would love to see it happen. They're just afraid to give up a room sometimes, but I think it would be awesome for some of these hotels that
Yeah,
have
I do.
all of these rooms and space.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just there's a bar in London. Well, it's Brewdog. There's the Brewdog in London in Waterloo, and they have, they've built this huge space. It's got a coffee shop concession in there. It's got its own brewery in there. It's got a bowling alley. It's got its own slide where you can go from the top floor to the bottom floor, and it's got conference rooms. And one of the conference rooms is a podcast studio, and it's got the big on air sign like you've got there. And there's always people in it. It's always got on air flashing on it. So I think there's a huge opportunity from it and a huge market for people to go and to use it. So yeah, I think there's definitely opportunity with that moving forwards for sure.
Yeah, who are some places that you're seeing doing well, like very well? Like when you look at hotel brands, like wow, they're doing it really good. Is it anything that you see that stands out to you?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it over there, but there's a brand called Ennismore who's now part of Accor. So the Hoxton Hotel, 25 hours hotels, they're doing, Hoxton's an institution, obviously from here in London anyway. But I think some of their new hotels under the 25 hours brand are really, really cool. I stayed in one in Munich, and it was just super local. Really localized, had a really nice feel, loads of amazing touch points around the hotel. There was a little bit by the lobby which was old-fashioned typewriters, and my kids were sat on that for like 45 minutes just couldn't
Typing away.
understand what these things were. Yeah, and why do you have to put paper in this thing, Daddy? Like, where's the computers? And it was just little things like that were just amazing touches. They had a real nice retail space in there as well that was selling things that you actually wanted to buy. Great F&B that sat in it as well. So I think big shout out to those guys. I think they're doing an amazing job, and I really like what Accor have done in terms of some of their brands that they've bought up and kind of left to feel like what they were when they bought them, because that's always my fear. I saw obviously Hilton buy Nomad the other day, and I just really worry sometimes when these big brands buy up the small guys whether they're going to lose their essence. But they've done a cracking job on doing that as well. And I think if we're looking at the big brands, I want to shout out to Marriott, because I think how they've developed the different brands that sit within their portfolio, especially in the luxury side of things, I just think they've created this this kind of catalogue of brands that all serve their own purpose, all have a real clear identity, and whenever you want a different experience, I think they cover it with Ritz-Carlton, with St. Regis, with what they've done with the Westin hotels, especially in the resort side of things. The Edition hotels, I think, are great. When you start looking at the Moxies as well from a lifestyle perspective, I just think they're curating a real nice catalogue of brands that sit there as well. So they would be my shout outs. What would you say?
You gave some great ones.
What you're seeing?
Ennismore is over here now, and here in Miami and Miami Beach. And hopefully they're going to revive some of the brands that they took over, because, SLS was a cool brand down here for a while.
Yes.
And then I think just after they sold, it just didn't go right. And so now Ennismore is running that. They're going to take over the Delano
Mm.
Hotel, which is a special hotel to
Okay.
me that I
Yeah.
used to work at. And
Mm.
so it's being rebuilt right now. So I'm excited to see what they do with that, because if they can make that a
Mm.
home run, that would be cool. But you mentioned
Yeah.
Accor, and they invested in a hotel that it's. I didn't think I was going to like it. I didn't even want to like it, but it's called the Faena Hotel, and it's owned by this guy Alan Faena. And if you haven't seen it, I would just say take a look at it. It was the whole place is designed by Baz Luhrmann, who was the director of Elvis and Moulin Rouge and a bunch of like crazy
Mm.
movies with a certain style. So when you walk in, you feel like you're walking into a movie set, and you can go have dinner and watch someone who's a great singer while you're having dinner. They have this beautiful theater that looks like it came from Moulin Rouge, where you go see an amazing show. Then you've got
Mm.
after dinner nightclub in the place that is amazing. It's like I think that's what I like about hotels now, is that you feel like you're being transported somewhere. You can do
Yeah.
a whole day or night there and just enjoy what's going on without making it feel like it's a giant convention resort, if that makes sense. So I
Yeah.
like what they're doing very much. And I've been going to a lot of boutique hotels with this challenge I gave myself. And I see a lot of family owned hotels that I was like, man, I've never really stepped foot in here for 15
Mm.
years. And you're doing awesome things in here. Like you mentioned, like
Yeah.
typewriters and art and a
Yep.
cool coffee shop and different things. So I
Mm.
really like what these boutique hotels are doing right now, too.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting space actually, because I just think they've got a freedom, haven't they, to really think outside the box. They're not trying to be too safe. They're not trying to worry about too many people and where that sits. And
Mhm.
I really enjoy that space. It's the same with the lifestyle hotels. I think those guys are really doing some real cool, edgy stuff. We've got some brilliant stuff that's opening in like East London now, which is the hip part of town. So it's a bit like the Brickell in part of town in Miami, and there's some really cool concepts opening. The Mondrian opened a couple of years ago. That was a really cool space.
Yep.
But I think you're right. I think I get asked a lot about, years ago, everyone wanted to be in hotels from an F&B perspective, and what's changed and things like that. And we've brought up a couple of words on this recording today, which is things like safe and boring and obvious. And I just think that's where we've got, when I think about some of the big chefs that we all have come to love now, and let's pick one out. Gordon Ramsay, he started in hotels. That's how his restaurant empire grew, was aligning himself with hotels. And it used to be the place to go if you wanted to be a great chef. You aligned yourself with a great hotel, and that whole kind of sexiness has gone. And I think where you look at some of the hotels like you're explaining, we've got one here called the Ned, which is very similar. They take you on a journey, and they've kind of put that fun back into hotels. And I think we've just, through some of the chains, I think they've become a little bit too functional, and we've lost that element of being fun. And I think back to your point about boutique hotels, lifestyle hotels, I think they're starting to put fun back into hotels again, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And I like seeing, that we're leaning kind of food and beverage here, is when you allow the team to be creative, right? Because it's when you have too many people involved is when things get watered down. And I've seen it
Mm.
with teams that have strong food and beverage director, a hotel manager that came from food and beverage, maybe a GM too. They have like amazing overall experiences. I'm not generalizing, but they
Yeah.
understand food and beverage. They want to be cool. They don't want to water it down, and they push the envelope. And those hotels are doing a great job. It's the others that are more, well, it's just a nice amenity. We're not really looking to make money from this. Just don't lose money. That end up being places that are never cool and never have anybody there,
Mm.
and they wonder why. I think and they charge an arm and a
Mm.
leg still to get in there. So
Yeah.
it's tough out there, but you have to take chances. If you don't take those chances, the place will not be successful.
Yeah, risk I think is a huge one, isn't it? And I think sometimes I sit in conversations with hoteliers, and it's like the question they say back to me is, "What if?" And what if it doesn't work? And
So what if
my
it does?
question back to them always is, "What if it does?" And
Yeah.
if it doesn't, it isn't going to be any worse than it is now. So let's put some fun back into it. Let's listen to your guests. Let's listen to your teams. Let's look at what the story is. How can you be different? How can you stand out from the crowd? And I think this is a lot there, and it's funny. The amount of times I speak to hotels and they have issues or the performance isn't quite where they want to be, and they're not doing simple things. They don't have a button on Google. The Google My Business isn't optimized. They're not on listing platforms, and some of those simple bits that don't get lost from restaurants and restaurateurs, I think sometimes get lost in the myriad of everything going on in the hotel. The pressure from rooms and it being the the profit driver of the space and things like that. But I was speaking to Michael Grove from Hotstats the other day, and he was saying now, because hotels are starting to measure themselves on total revenue now, they have to start putting more attention into things like F&B, into some of the support amenities, because the benchmark has now changed from driving RevPAR to total revenue, and really looking at how they can utilize some of those extra amenities.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of room to do some cool things in room as well. When you're talking about
Mm,
total, like a lot of people are dropping mini bars, but I think they're just not doing it the right
yep,
way. I've been talking about this a lot. Um, I'm a big believer in minibar. If you have unique items that you can't find at the shop downstairs, like across the street, like here we have 7-Elevens. I don't know what the equivalent is there,
yep,
but
yep,
you don't have a Snickers bar if there's a Snickers bar across the street. But if you have something that's gourmet and different that people want to try out, they're going to try these things, and you have unique
mm,
items. I think that's a really good place to make some extra money. I mean, it was a big revenue driver for me at my last two resorts because we really focused a lot of time on unique items. Um,
yep,
you just kind of triggered my brain as you talked about total revenue. There's just so many areas that you could really do something with that is different. So,
mm,
you know, room service is always tough, but if you lock in the right pricing where you're not charging £100 for a turkey club,
yep,
once it gets to
yep,
your room and you actually take some time to really think of what's creative, you'll drive room service. So there's just ways, I think,
yep.
new ways of people to think about things that they're just not doing right now.
Yeah, definitely. And I did a post today actually about how sometimes I think we make it difficult for people to buy as well. I think we put process and what we want things to be over the fact that people just want stuff, and it always makes me laugh, especially when it comes to things like rooms and F&B and some of the amenities. Is a lot of these chains now are going towards you have an app, you can check in beforehand, you can tell me what preferences you want, you can check in, you can go to the hotel, you don't even have to visit the reception desk anymore, you go straight to your room and you're in your room. Yet we don't have QR ordering in bedrooms for room service to make it easy for guests. We don't make it easy downstairs to get a table. One of the questions I hate is, do you have a reservation with us? And I know you have to ask the question, but there's ways to ask that question and ways to ask that
Yeah.
question to a guest as well. So I think, I did a post on it today about how I think sometimes we make our lives difficult as well in terms of making it easy to buy in hotels. And it's
No,
just
that's it.
funny, isn't it? It's yeah,
Yeah, because you said to get a room is easy. It's like I have a client. You get a free shout out to my client here, the real time reservation, and they
yeah,
are helping fix a lot of this stuff. Um, because I was frustrated. I had to log in. I did a count. I had 18 different logins for programs just to run food and beverage at
yeah,
a large hotel, and none of
yeah,
them talked to each other. Right. So if I needed to pull reports or do things, I couldn't track anything in one place. So I'm happy to see like this kind of company is doing that. I think there's more innovation needed to do that in hotels
mm,
because we're all still using old technology. But
yeah,
you're right; it makes it very difficult. Like if I want to book a meeting room, I can't just book a meeting room like I do a hotel. I gotta call somebody, wait for someone to get back to me, send me a menu,
yeah,
send me a contract, all this thing before I can even book a meeting room
yeah.
for a day that I just need for a couple hours.
Mm.
Anyhow, I'm ranting here, Scott. I'm ranting to people
No,
about booking rooms and different things here.
do you know what though? That it really is. There'll be some people sitting there listening to it, going, "Actually, yeah, that's my hotel. Like, you can't book a conference room at my hotel." And I always used to have a rule when I was running a hotel. We always had to have conference rooms set up because if you had show rounds, you had to have them on the best light, and so making it easy for those people to do it. I'm going to give a shout out to one of my clients here, which is the Social Hub. So they're a hotel group out of Amsterdam. They've got 19 hotels in Europe, and essentially their model is they have elevated student accommodation on one side of the hotel, boutique hotel on the other. It's joined by a huge common area downstairs with games and co-working spaces, grab and goes, restaurants, and they've automated everything. They've made it super easy. You can book spaces, you can book rooms, you can book restaurants, you can book what time you go and do your cleaning downstairs if you're in the student accommodation, in their laundry rooms. And it's just incredibly easy, and it's all built around community. And I think that's a huge piece for me now about hotels. Is I think one of the big ways hotels can reestablish themselves in the market is we have to build around community. We have to look at where people are going locally. How can we deliver that? How can we deliver that experience? And I think if we start doing that, I think people will start making different decisions about what goes into hotels, how hotels are zoned, what amenities are important to people. And I think we've got the real opportunity by looking at that to really start thinking about the model of what hotels are like. And I think, back to some of these, the Moxies, back to people like Voco Hotels now coming up, the Kimptons are all starting to do that a little bit differently, and they're heading in the right direction, I think.
I think you nailed a lot of good things here because it has to be about the community. You're not going if you want to get to your budgets now, you need outside people coming to your hotel that are not just guests. And so if you don't have that pool or that resort, how do you get people there? And I think like you said, a lot of things you said, whether it's the podcast or a place to sit and work or a place to have some fun with your friends that is different, that you can easily get into. Like the Addition has ice skating and bowling here in Miami
Yeah.
Beach. Right? I think
Yeah.
that's like the coolest thing in a cool environment. It's one of the more fun hotels, and so you're right. You got to think differently about how you get people in with not with like a golf simulator one that no one's ever going to use, right? I think about those things. It's like what are things people are actually going to use?
Yeah, 100%, definitely. There's I think social entertainment has got a big part to play with hotels coming up as well, especially resort hotels and things like that. So I think is it Swingers that's gone into the Nomad in New York. So you've got like the Put Shack downstairs and stuff, but I think especially in resorts, that social entertainment piece has got a real collaboration waiting to happen there with hotels. I think it's great. And just to kind of finish the chat, because this has been brilliant, and we haven't done half of the questions we prepared for, so maybe that lines us up
we've got an
to a
hour
part
already.
two. Exactly, it might line us up to a part two for sure. Is I want to thinking about the future. I mean, we've just touched on it a little bit, but what do you think are some of the things that are going to be really important to hotels or hoteliers maybe in the next year, the next couple of years? Let's not go too long term on this one.
Yeah, I would say like in the next 2 years is using tools that are making your teams more efficient, right? People, especially the middle managers, I see them more stressed out than ever because they're getting pressure from their team that doesn't want to work on strict schedules. They want more flexible schedules. Then you have the bosses that are giving them even more goals and more responsibilities, and they're short staffed. It's making those people as efficient as possible. So whether it's using AI tools, like Facebook and Meta now all have this Llama 3 that I was playing with that works great, or Chat GPT that most people know about, whatever it might be. There's some hotels that don't let people use them. And so they're just handicapping themselves, whether it's tools that are new and fresh versus using the old Oracle tools that crash and burn a lot of times in the restaurants. I just think there's so many unique things coming out now. And it's like even getting faster now with all the technology speeding up. But using the right ones to make your teams more efficient, that's what I see happening, and I want to happen more, because if not, you'll continue to see turnover rates sky high because it is just too much going on for especially the middle manager level. They're getting crushed.
Yeah, 100%. I saw a scientific research on the Burnt Chef project that they did on a restaurant group in London. It's not been released, but I got sight of it through the founder, Chris, and it actually highlighted middle managers, so basically store GMs, as the people most likely to suffer burnout, the ones who were not taking holiday, the annual leave allocation, the ones who were working the most hours, the ones who were under the most pressure, and it singled them out. The next ones after that, ironically, were the senior leadership. and it just shows, right, the two people with probably the most. So a lot, one of the things that came out of this was all of their activities that they were doing around well-being and mental health was all to the mass, to the team members, but actually the people who were most at risk were the management. And as we all know, poor management goes downhill and still creates the turnover anyway. So it was almost wasted cash going in there because they weren't dealing with the real problem. So you bang on with that one that comes from it. I'm a big believer. I say it all the time. If you're using legacy tech, you're not using the right tech anymore. It's not agile. They're not moving quick enough. They're not moving with the market. And there's some great providers out there that can integrate into PMS. I'm doing a lot of work at the minute with Lightspeed, who, from an EPOS perspective, who seem to be getting some real good integrations into PMS and working to really help the operators and speed things up and change what's doing. So that's cool. I was thinking about this question today when I was sitting on the tube on the way back home to do the recording, and it was interesting. I was reading. There's a boutique hotelier magazine here. I was reading their daily email shot, and they were talking about Gleneagles, who have now come out and committed to being net zero by 2040. And I think that piece is going to be really interesting. Same time, I was on Twitter or X, and I saw a post here about Hilton, who have launched across 4 hotels in London zero waste menu. They've already done like the green buffet over Ramadan in the Middle East, and I just think that whole moving away from sustainability, because I think it's too broad a term, going to more planet conscious, people putting more effort into food waste, water usage, and some of the real things that we can actually influence in hotels, I think is going to start becoming more and more prominent. And I use the word planet conscious because I was talking to one of my clients, the Social Hub, who have a net zero promise by 2030. And I was talking to the sustainability director, and she was saying the problem with sustainability is, if it went on sustainability, if you're a current hotel, if you start going into it, you're looking at packaging, you're looking at everything you're using. And when you start doing cost analysis, it starts being really difficult to give a clear ROI quickly. She was saying when you start looking at planet conscious, you start doing all your decisions there on in become a conscious decision. Is it hitting the right note from a planet perspective? And they started doing things like AI monitoring for breakfast buffets. So they'd have the bin, and it'd have a camera over the bin, and it would record, and through AI, it would track all the wastage that was there. So they did monthly meetings where they were really optimizing, one, the product. So what products were coming back not eaten at the end of the breakfast service the most. And the other one was what is the guest wasting, because it's half eaten or it's coming back off guest plates. And they were really able to really get their breakfast buffet honed on to, one, what people really ate, and two, the volumes accurate, because of they could start managing and forecasting effectively. And I think that whole planet conscious bit is going to start coming in, where I think guests will start choosing hotels that are doing things the right way. I think that's probably going to start becoming more and more obvious as we go along as well.
I agree. I see it with the brand, the One Hotel. People are paying crazy numbers just to stay there, and that's their whole thing. So I love it.
Yeah. 100%. Well, this is Steve. Brilliant. I knew this was going to be a great chat, and we could keep on going forever, but I'm conscious we have to get back to our days. And definitely, I think there should be a part 2 at some point. So thank you very much for taking the time to have a chat, and look forward to issuing this out to everyone.
Yeah, Scott, it was great having you, or having been on your show. And it's not many times I get to share a platform with somebody that knows as much or more. So I love being here with you and sharing our knowledge with everybody.
So just before we go, Steve, if people haven't seen you on LinkedIn or seen your podcast, the show you're doing, and not to give away too much, how can people get hold of you? Tell us more about the newsletter and the shows you do and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, easiest way is on LinkedIn. You follow me, Steve Turk. Very simple, but I have the Hospitality Mentor brand that we built up, and you can see us at thehospitalitymentor.com. I share everything on every platform, but really the most dynamic is on LinkedIn, where the most people are engaging with it. We've got a newsletter, we have videos, we've got podcasts, we've got articles, and now we're doing speaking. So I got hired to do my official first speaking engagement at a big conference, which I'm looking forward to do
Awesome.
that. So it continues to
Yeah, that's
evolve,
fantastic.
but all in
Yeah,
the power
awesome.
of
And that
sharing, right? If we weren't sharing, none of this would be
100%.
happening.
No, back to the start of the show, it's exactly the thing, isn't it? I'm having a few conversations as well, and I've been speaking to hotel groups as well for the same thing. And it's, it'd be really cool to stand on front of people and see reactions as well as you're talking. But I want to give a huge shout out as well to the show that you do with Sarah every week as well on Good Morning Hospitality. Because if you haven't checked in, I drop in, drop out, but I always try and get hold of it because it's a great resource to see what's going on in the industry. So big shout out to that. It's Wednesdays. What's
So
the
we
time?
do
EST?
Wednesdays, 10 a.m. Eastern time. And for Sarah, she's in the West Coast, so she's 3 hours earlier. But Sarah Dandishi and I, we do a great show. We have so much fun. We just did it this morning. We're going to do a live show actually here in Miami at the Biltmore Hotel next week. So it'll be live, and we take live questions as it goes on, and we love interacting with people. It's just a great platform for us to be on. And she's a powerhouse too, so she's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And it's 3 p.m. In the UK here as well. So, get that in the calendars because it's a really cool place. If you're going up the ladder or if you're on the ladder, you want to just see what's going on and have chats with Steve and Sarah, definitely check that out. So, Steve, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. It was really awesome having you on the show.
I appreciate it, Scott.
Thank you for listening to Hospitality Huddles. I really hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. And if you did, please leave a review wherever you might listen to your podcasts. It really helps the show and it's only going to take a couple of minutes. If you don't want to miss a future episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get it into your feed as soon as each episode is released. Hospitality Huddles is brought to you by Auden Hospitality, helping hoteliers to think differently to create F&B outlets that their guests will love. Learn more about how we help hotel operations every single day by visiting our website at audenhospitality.com. This has been Hospitality Huddles, where hospitality meets conversation, one huddle at a time. That's all for this week. We'll see you next time.